Going live. Hi, this is James O'Keefe of the Massachusetts Pirate Party. I want to welcome you all to our latest pirate news. I have with me Steve, our secretary. Steve, how you doing?
It's snowing. It's snowing and I've been shoveling, thank you.
But it's not a snow emergency, so thankfully we're not getting so much that we have to worry about that.
No, but I still got to shovel the car out.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We were talking just before as to what we should talk about, and one of the things that our compatriot Malta had brought up was that there's another Section 230 bill we have to worry about. Do you want to give a quick summary, Steve?
Sure. We'll start by talking a little bit about what Section 230 is. This is a federal law that was, I guess it dates back to the 90s. I mean, early days of the internet. And, one could make, I think you could also say that it was instrumental in, making the internet, basically allowing the internet to flourish, to evolve, to grow, that sort of thing. But the general gist of the law is that a hosting provider or a service is not liable for things that users of that service say. So a straightforward example is on a social media site like Facebook or Twitter or Facebook is not liable for things that their users say. Alternatively, if you, for example, have website hosting, you run a little website, your hosting provider is not liable for what you say. So, I mean, it gave the businesses that were, doing the hosting a really strong degree of indemnification. So what I don't know, Jamie, do you think that's a fairly good summary? Anything I missed in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that covers the fine points of it. Absolutely. Thanks.
Now, so the proposed changes, and I'm basing this from a red line copy of Section 230 that was released by Senator Mark Warner. And we can put a link to this in the chat. So, y'all can, not in the chat, in the comments or the description so that people can read this for themselves. It's one of the clear goals is to take this sort of broad indemnification that Section 230 is offered and to basically scale it back. And the exemption seems to be, for cases where the provider is paid. So, for example, if the provider is not being paid, then they're indemnified. But if they are being paid, they're not indemnified. So, for example,
actually, let me just get in there 1 second.
Go for it.
Because TechDirt has another good article, and there's a couple of them we'll link to. Well, one of the things is that if money's exchanged and it's unclear exactly quite what that means, is it, are you using like AOL and paying a monthly fee? Is it I bought some ads? Is it I gave you a donation? It's not clear. But if money's exchanged, then there's no defense. If money isn't exchanged, and again, it's not completely clear, then that's merely, it gets rid of the indemnification, but it allows you to give a affirmative defense. In other words, if you're a hosting provider and you're hosting neo-Nazis, for example, and someone decides to go after you, or you're hosting Black Socialists of America, for example, and someone decides to go after you. I'm not in any way saying those are equivalent. Just to be clear, Nazis, screw them. Black Social America, great. Good luck.
I mean, the cases I had been picturing of, paid advertisements. So, that means you were liable. A company that sold ads would be liable for, what their advertisers say in them. Someone who like promoted a tweet or a post on, Facebook or Twitter, that would Facebook or Twitter would be liable for those. The company I pay, or the the co-op I pay to host my website would be liable for the things I put there, which are mostly public meeting notes, but still.
Someone could object to your interpretation of them or something like
that. Exactly. And I mean, it sort of creates a weird dichotomy where, providers that are paid are subject to liability, whereas someone who runs it for free is not. And it's an interest. The question about that you raised, Jamie, before about donations is kind of interesting. If like, for example, Wikipedia. Wikipedia is paid for donations. So is it paid for by, donations essentially? So is it liable for things that Wikipedians write? It's not clear to me whether, just by reading this.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, my Section 230 indemnifies all providers. And what this would do is it would remove that. It would remove that and then say, well, if so as was pointed out by Mike Mastick, right? So as it goes now, if someone comes up and says they decide to sue you, hosting provider or something like that, then you can merely go and fill out, put together a very brief form and send it off to the judge saying, no, this isn't right. You got to throw it out because we're indemnified, right? Whereas this would say, well, if money's exchanged, that completely goes out and they can go forward with it. Whereas if money isn't exchanged, then their suit still goes forward. You have a trial. And if you're a small hosting provider or you're a small social network or a blog, whatever, then you're going to go to trial and you're going to see legal fees that could very well kill your site. I mean, even something like Gawker ultimately got taken down through this method, right? When they went after it and they got the judgment for Hulk Hogan, right? $100 million, and they were gone. So in a case where we don't have universal anti-SLAP laws or laws stopping SLAP lawsuits, then it is far too easy for Trump, who is known for it, or others to try and just sue someone to silence them.
Yeah, I mean, AntiSlap runs a whole gamut of things. I mean, one common case where it's come up, SLAP lawsuits, I mean, is someone finds, a defect in a product, writes an article about it, and the manufacturer says, no, that's not true, and we're going to sue you for it. Even now, we'll assume that the defect is real and the article is truthful, but the manufacturer doesn't want their reputation tarnished by people talking about problems with their product. An anti-SLAP lawsuit prevents that sort of thing.
Absolutely. We've certainly seen a number of, we've certainly seen, service providers like dentists. I think there was something a few years back about a dentist who tried to silence everyone who said negative things about his practice or something like that. Plenty of services will go and do that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about, you know, about the change, the proposed change is that I'm really puzzled about is that, you know, the current version of Section 230, you know, talked about publishers, and what they published was information. Information is the word used in the law. And this proposed modification strikes the word information and replaces it with speech. And I'm, you know, absent definitions, and maybe these are defined, the terms are defined elsewhere, but I'm struck by why the change from information to speech, and sort of trying to think through what would be considered information but not speech.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, we exist. We exist in a country where laws and the judgments of lawsuits in regards to those laws are not necessarily public record. So is this going to be yet another tool for making sure that we have no idea what our laws are? Is this just another tool to say, oh, no, that's not speech and thus isn't protected?
Yeah, so this will be, I have to admit, you know, I don't know where this is in the drafting stage. I don't have you know, necessarily a warm and fuzzy feeling about it right now. But, you know, that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, we in 2020 we certainly came out against the Earn It Act, which is another end run around, another way to gut Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And gosh, there's no doubt there are others that are going to come down the pike, because it seems to be a bipartisan effort to go after this. And
It's really, it's kind of interesting. They're a bipartisan effort, but, you know, the two sides are going in different ways, where, you know, Republicans tended to poo-poo service providers because, you know, censorship. And now this bill, you know, is essentially requiring service providers to do more censorship, or to censor material that would run afoul of the law.
right, I mean, that's a really good point, because you know, if companies are going, if hosting providers, or even, you know, something like Patreon or something like you know, a service like that, where that's clearly money is going to be exchanged, right? They're going to be a lot less supportive of alternative viewpoints if they know someone could end up coming after them. It's going to be the most milk toast efforts that they're going to support. So if you wanted to have risque anime, or or, you know, veer into topics that you know, it isn't even that long ago, you know, where lots of people could have used this to go after LGBT people who are using Patreon, LGBTQ people who are using Patreon to support their videos about other, say, LGBTQ folks, or about their lives or things like that. And now, you know, that wasn't that long ago that people, if Section 230 wasn't there, if this interpretation, if this text was the law, they would have gone after you know, LGBTQ folks on Patreon. And there's a lot of other, you know, we you know, we're certainly anti-vax, and we're anti-Nazi, and we're anti-fascist.
No, we're anti-vax. Not
So
anti-vax.
sorry. Yes. Yay,
Needed to
vax.
clarify.
Yeah, or anti-vax. Thank you for correcting me on that. But my point is that, but at the same time, there are other viewpoints on copyright reform or on patents, on transparency laws, where we're, we don't, of the established voices, we're not with them. And so if those tools can be used because we take donations, by the way, you can go to masspirates.org and give us a donation. But it could be used against us. Then, in essence, that's going to be used to silence us, which is completely against the First Amendment, as far as I'm concerned. And thank you again for correcting me on that. I'm looking forward to the COVID vaccine myself. So we've been rambling on. Are there any other news stories you want to cover, or should we just call it a day?
I think we could call it a day. Yeah, life goes on,
Yeah, we're not leaving our houses, but
something, there was a really cool little plow, on that just ran by in back of my place. There's a boardwalk on a section of conservation land. So this tiny little snow plow just rolled by and cleared the boardwalk. It was awesome.
Now, where do they put that? Does that go into the river that's there, or the stream?
I presume it just gets brushed over. It looks like it just got brushed over to the side. So it's, on the, not the brook side of the boardwalk, but the land side of the boardwalk.
I see. Okay. So it'll just melt and go into eventually it'll melt. And
yeah, I mean, it's a floodplain. Floodplains are for storing stormwater. And so if you push the snow onto the floodplain, well, that's what it's for, right?
Absolutely. It's built houses on stilts. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you very much, Steve. And thanks for everyone who's watching. And, again, you can find us at masspirates.org, where you can find what the activities we're doing. You can give us a donation. You can sign up to be a supporter or join our mailing list. Please like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We go and post pretty much once a week at 7:30 p.m. Eastern for less than half an hour. So check us out, and thank you very much for watching. And thank you again, Steve, for being here.
Oh, yeah.
Take care, folks. Bye.